Hello, my name is Zach Rye with Old Man Gaming. Welcome to another Snap Judgment review. What is a Snap Judgment review if you've never listened? Well, I think most game reviewers nowadays, they get a little caught up in the fact that they have to get through 100% of the game or close to. They forget what it's like to just play it for the first 10 hours and whether or not that's fun. That's what I do. I give myself about 5 to 10 hours with the game, and I'm just trying to give you an idea whether you're going to enjoy it right off the bat or not. That, coupled with the fact that I think video games are one of the most subjective forms of art, I will not be giving scores with this review. Instead, I will be telling you the overview of what the game is. Then I'll be telling you the pros and the cons of the game in my point of view, as all reviews are. And then I'll be telling you whether I will be sticking with the game outside the purposes of this video or not. So, what are we reviewing today? Looking forward to this. We've done, I got to play a bunch of games over the holiday break. These are the first reviews, the first batch reviews going up in the new year. They're all a little bit older games, but they're games that I got to get to finally, so I'm excited about them. And today, the first one that we're looking at is Meet Your Maker. What is Meet Your Maker? It is from Behaviur Studios, the people who brought you Dead by Daylight. It is their new foray into games as service, and very excited to talk about it. What is it? It is very new, in my opinion, a very new concept to it. It's, like I said, it's a games as service, but you primarily play it solo. You can do co-op runs with other players, but for the most part, here's how you interact with other people. You play a character who has to go into somebody else's built structure to steal something from it. At the same time, using the resources that you collect doing that to build your own structure to keep people out of yours. So the whole aesthetic is that this is hyper post-apocalyptic. Like, humans don't even really exist anymore. They're either mutants or clones or weird baby things in jars. It's very hard to keep up with, and honestly, the aesthetic we'll talk about a little bit in cons is definitely reminiscent of the kind of dreary drabness that comes out of a Warhammer 40k storyline. That being said, it serves a purpose. Basically, the idea is there is this giant baby human thing in a jar called a chimera. It's trying to rebuild the human civilization, but to do this, it needs pure genetic codes. The genetic codes have been altered by radiation and other pollutants and diluted into the mutants that roam the world and blah, 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 blah. So you're trying to get enough of these genetic samples so that it can recreate the human race. To do this, basically, there are other chimeras and other people like you out there who are trying to protect their own genetic samples. So you build your base to protect your genetic sample while taking other people's genetic sample. So the game kind of works like this. You have this kind of hub base area where you can spend the resources that you've gained to work on your base. Well, that's a little bit different, but to upgrade your materials, upgrade the traps that you can work on your base, upgrade the monsters that you can place at your base, all sorts of stuff like that. And then, of course, it also serves at a place where you can launch your next expedition out to collect more materials or head over to one of your bases and build it, prestige it, max it out, that sort of thing. So once you pick which one you're doing, whether it be going out on the expedition or going into the build mechanic, you kind of take off. The build mechanic's pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy. I found its interface almost idiot-proof. You kind of use materials to unlock bigger, more powerful enemies and bigger, more powerful traps to build your structure out of to protect your gen mat or the thing that the other people are trying to steal. There's also an additional tile in it that when somebody strikes it, gives them a bunch of extra little goodies that you can also booby trap. And then you set that thing up. You have to have a certain, there's a max level on your base of the amount of traps and stuff you can place. You can't place above that, and then there's a minimum level where it won't let you actually save it unless you get there to have a minimum difficulty level of traps. There's also all sorts of different perks. You can even set it up so that once somebody collects the genetic stuff, things turn on all over again, or things only turn on the way out instead of the way in. In addition to that, one thing I really liked, which I should be talking about in pros, but you can set up the patrol of your enemies when you place them, your actual monsters. So you can place a monster, then you can set the patrol by walking the circle back to the monster, and then the monster will just walk in that circle on and on and on when somebody goes into it, which I thought was really cool, easy, and very intuitive controlling-wise. On the other side of things, the expedition side, the thing you're probably going to be spending most of your time doing, because you have to do the expeditions to operate your bases. Your bases, basically, there is a certain amount of one of the currencies, the yellow currency. I don't remember all the currency names. There's a lot of currencies in this game. You have to basically feed your base. You have to give your base like, oh, here's 500 of this material, and it'll turn on for a certain amount of time. Which is a certain amount of runs of other people going into it. And this will operate even when you're not on the game, and eventually shut down once the amount of people, other players, have run your base as required. Now, every time you get a kill from that, you get resources. So that's actually really cool. That'll feed you into kind of making your character better and whatnot, which is also nice. But again, back into the expeditions. The expeditions, interestingly enough, the map for expeditions, the minute you go into it, it takes you into something that looks a lot like a blood tree from Dead by Daylight. You definitely can see the similarities in Behaviur's games. And basically what it'll be is it'll be this kind of procedurally generated little spider web, depending on which level you picked. There is a normal, a hard, and then a brutal. And the challenge of the things inside that get procedurally generated are harder and harder depending on how you do it. By procedurally generated, it doesn't actually generate the maps. The maps are all generated by other players. Instead, what it does is it procedurally generates which maps are on your little blood tree from other players and their reasonable difficulty levels on each of their little maps. So if your map has a half skull or a skull, it's probably going to end up in that normal for somebody. And basically what it'll do is it'll pull a certain number of those, then it'll pull a certain number of extra resource things, and then basically when you go in, you can kind of move through your blood tree in any way you want. It's not a blood tree, but you get what I'm saying. You can move through your expedition any way you want to collect certain resources. Basically, after every one of your runs, you'll get another resource from something, and then there are certain runs that actually get attached to special things like mods and whatnot. So yeah, that's it. You run those missions to collect more stuff, to operate your base, to collect more stuff. It's games to surface, simple, straightforward model. And that's how it goes. You'll go out on the expedition, collect stuff, come back, feed your base, upgrade your stuff that either makes your base more scary or you more scary, then go back in, rinse and repeat. There are daily objectives, weekly objectives, and then you're constantly leveling up your Chimera. So let's go ahead and get into the pros and cons. I like to go positive always first, so we'll do the pros first. First of all, the uniqueness of this game. It's unlike anything else that I can think of off the top of my head. And I've been playing games for most of my adult life, the last 30 years at least. And I cannot remember seeing any game quite like this. There may have been one. It just doesn't pop into my head right now. But this is pretty unique as far as it goes, which is something I really enjoyed. The other thing that kind of fits into the uniqueness, while this does work as kind of a first-person shooter, it really isn't. It works more like a puzzle game. You die almost instantaneously when taking any sort of damage. So if you're thinking, oh, I'll just pump my life stat or whatever and barrel through traps, you won't. You'll die pretty hard. You've got to find those traps, destroy those traps. Plus, destroying traps gives you, more of that currency that you need. Same with the bad guys. They hit you once, you're done. But if you hit them once, you're done. So it's much more like a combination of twitch reflexes and slow, methodical, intelligent thing, like looking around for stuff. And I like that. I think that's really interesting and just unlike anything else that I've seen. My second one is the intuitiveness of the build mechanics. I kind of already spoke about this a little bit. It is very easy to build your bases in this, and with a mechanic that could technically be pretty hard. I mean, there's a lot of games that don't get this right. I found it incredibly easy, quick, and accessible to build my base. I didn't feel like it was a slog. I didn't feel like it was a wasted effort or time. I didn't feel like it was keeping me from something more fun. I had just as much fun laying out the traps as I did on the expedition, if not more, which we'll talk about again in the cons, but I thought that was really cool. My third pro. This is one of the coolest ones. This is the thing that I discovered right at the end of my playthrough, and I think it is just one of the nicest little touches to this thing. And that is, you can watch the replays of anybody who has attempted your bases. That is really cool. It is really, really cool. Can't say that enough, to watch how somebody dies, how you got somebody. Once I discovered this, I literally spent like 30 minutes just watching other people play my maps in order to kind of get a better idea of A, how to fortify it, but B, just to see, well, like, where did I catch him? Where was I smart? How did they elude me? How did they beat me? It's really cool. It's a nice addition. It's a nice touch, and it definitely makes you feel more connected to those deaths at your base, which could be something that's just like a resource that just kind of pours in every once in a while that you don't think about. But with this, it really makes you like connected to the raiders who are raiding your base. And I thought it was just a great little touch. All right, let's talk about the cons. Let's go negative. Let's get into it. My biggest con has got to be the price on this thing. I am a big fan of things being free that should be free and things that should be paid for that are paid for. I don't necessarily think this should be a paid-for game. There are a lot of in-game currencies. However, I'm going to say this right off the bat. This is nowhere near as egregious as Dead by Daylight and all their skins and their different killers and everything like this. With this, it's way less bad on the level of like pay to win, pay to play sort of situation. That was something I always hated about Dead by Daylight. Is it, you know, it's a $20 to $30 price tag on something that then is just jam-packed full of microtransactions. Whereas this definitely has some microtransactions. I did not feel like I was getting screwed over at all with purchasing it, which was really nice. But there are a couple of downsides to this one. One of the biggest things I don't like is the connection from base building to expedition. First of all, I completely understand the need, like how they did the loop, which is you have to go on the expeditions to supply your bases to keep your bases running. I get that. You want them to be playing both sides. That's the whole idea of this game. You don't want somebody just sitting in the build and getting all their resources from building, or just doing expeditions, getting all the resources from expeditions. And that is good. However, the amount that you have to put on your bases to keep them running is astronomical. It would sometimes take me 3 or 4 runs to get the amount to get one base up and running and going. That being said, I have 2 bases just because I thought it would be cool to have 2 bases. I didn't want to delete my old one, which is even more. To make matters worse on this level, with bases, when they do run out of the whatever, you know, so like you turn them on, they have a certain amount of runs, and then when those runs are done, they're done. You have to do something called prestiging them. It's not even turning them back on. It's you have to go in and spend more money on them, or more of whatever currency on them, to turn them back on. This, of course, does come with a bump up in the overall amount of points you can put into the base. So, like, if your overall base level max cap was like 1,000 and you prestige it, it jumps up to 1,200. So your base, this is how your base becomes stronger. The only thing that sucks is, again, the only way to get this base turned back on is to prestige it. Like, you get 1 shot each prestige level, period. I hate that. I do. I'm sorry. It's just costs so much to keep your bases running that it's frustrating. There should definitely be a cost to keep your bases running, but just I don't want to constantly be. It's like every time I go into this game, I feel like I'm behind the 8 ball. I feel like I've let it go. Even when I'm going in just the next day, because everything's turned off again, and I have to reacquire all this substance to turn them back on for a very short period of time. I don't know exactly how you fix this. I just feel like the base part of it is really fun, but you don't get to spend a ton of time in it because of the fact that the cost on running those bases is so high. In fact, I would not even recommend as a player you ever have more than one base, because having 2 bases basically doubles all your costs on everything. I mean, eventually it would make sense to do it because you'd get one so high that getting another small one just to get more resources would make sense, but overall, like, it's just the one, and you only ever get to put more stuff in that one when you prestige, which is just super frustrating. I wish they had found a better way to do this, especially since the build mechanics in this game are some of the best things that this game has to offer. I like the expeditions. I'm not saying it isn't, but the actual building is so quick, so well done, that I do want to spend more time in it. I understand that they don't want us to spend all our time in that, but just a little bit more free time in it would have been really nice. I would have appreciated it. And then finally, I'm just going to say a lack of tutorials. There is a lot of figuring stuff out on your own, and a couple of things that's just not optimized. Like to prestige a base, I can't prestige the base without going to the base. Like, I can't, there isn't a menu where I can't just be like, oh, it's prestige now. I have to go to it, because it's like once you go to it, then you can put the equipment in. I don't really like that. I don't need a loading screen for that. Just let me have a thing that goes 650, my base got bigger, you know? I don't understand why I can't do that. And a couple of other things, like I didn't even know about the prestiging the base. I spent a really long time trying to figure out why I couldn't turn my base back on. They don't really explain everything. They kind of expect you to gleam it, and that always irritates me. So, whether or not I'm going to stick with it, I think that's a big old yes for right now. Whether it holds for extremely long periods of time, only time will tell, because there are a lot of really good games out there. And this has pulled my attention away from Baldur's Gate and stuff, but also I'm just now doing the review on it, so who knows if I stick with it after that. I definitely enjoy it. I've enjoyed ever sitting with it, and I am looking forward to playing it again. It's just whether or not I do. So did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? You can let me know in the comments below, or you can contact me on Facebook at OldManGamingDH, on Twitter at OldManGaming9. You can join our Discord, links in the description below, influence us in all of our shows from there. And as long as you keep watching and listening, we'll keep making it. Next week, we're checking out indie darling Engard, which I'm very excited for.